powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harris Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today. Go to Caesars.com. I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill on Twitter. Andrew DeCecco, Football at 4 from InsideTheBirds.com, at A DeCecco NFL, as he joins us now here with a look back and a look ahead and a look forward to the Eagles and Cowboys, and one last look at the Eagles and Niners, Andrew, which certainly had a little bit of a different feel. A lot of missed opportunities, which was a lot different. They seemed to capitalize on every opportunity in week number 1, not so in week 2.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate assessment. I mean, they got very cute in the red zone, which you have to run your offense, Mike. You just need to go with what got you there, run the football. You had opportunities to do so instead of doing, an outrageous call there. It didn't really make a lot of sense, obviously, with Greg Ward on the field. He's not really been a focal point on offense, so something obviously was awry if you're looking at it from the 49ers standpoint. And they defended it well. And, I thought that there were opportunities throughout the game for them to really take control of it, and they just didn't do it. But you know what? You heard Jalen Hurts say it after the game. You heard Nick Sirianni say it after the game. You take this loss, you own it, and then you move on and, correct the mistakes for next week because you have a big game against the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football.
Now, I mean, a learning experience, obviously. You're playing against a good 49ers team. But in that game, were there discouraging points, or was it other things that cost him in that game, or were there things that were really you left discouraged after seeing?
I don't know if I would say discouraged. I mean, there's certain parts of that game where you have to remember that you have a first-year play caller, Nick Sirianni, and Jalen Hurts is making a 6th start. You have a lot of young receivers out there. I mean, growing pains are to be expected, but it's not time at all. We're far from the point of hitting the panic button, I would say. I mean, the receivers, it was a group effort. I mean, the receivers, Jalen Reagor had a touchdown, but he was squeezed to the sideline there. Obviously, he needs to leave more room in his releases. But the receivers as a whole did not do a great job getting open against a physical set of corners in Josh Norman and Diomede Lenore. Are they all-world corners? They're far from it, but they're very physical. So I thought that they did a decent job in coverage. I thought the Eagles were going to do a better job of taking advantage of a shorthanded defense, which they did not. Jalen Hurts, I thought that his timing is a little bit off, particularly on the deep balls. I think he threw that good 91-yarder to Quez Watkins, but I thought that from by and large, his timing was a little bit off. You saw him take off and run because he had to. He hung in the pocket a lot longer than he had been, in his sample size last season. Guys just weren't getting open, and he took it upon himself to shoulder the offense and took off and used his legs. But I thought the defense did a solid job to keep him in the game. I just thought that offensively they need to execute better against the Cowboys.
Yeah, a lot of missed opportunities, including, they get down inside the goal line. You mentioned the Philly special S type of play, but I like it a lot too. I didn't love the play calls. I also didn't like the play design. That was a little discouraging, too. Like, there was a lot of routes where there was only one option. It just didn't seem like there was very good play design. And I thought, you talk about missed opportunities. You punch one in there, you're up 10-0, and then you mentioned the, Reagor stepping out of bounds. You could have been up 17-0 in this game.
Yeah, I mean, and they had all the momentum in the early goings of this game, right? I mean, Javon Hargrave coming out, stopping the running back Elijah Mitchell for a 4-yard loss. You had the crowd behind you. You had the momentum going, and there were opportunities, if you go back and watch, for the Eagles to really capitalize on the 49ers defense. The 49ers, you got to credit DeMeco Ryans for calling a tremendous game. He won that matchup against Nick Sirianni when Nick Sirianni's offense versus DeMeco Ryans' defense. I thought he did a really good job scheming things up, but there were opportunities there. I thought that they didn't necessarily open the playbook fully for Jalen Hurts. I think he can do a lot more than what he was really being asked to do. I think that they focus too much on the deep ball. They didn't really take advantage of the two tight ends working over the middle of the field. There were opportunities there. Again, I think this is, a learning situation for a very young offense.
Yeah.
Because the defense did their job, and you allow 17 points.
Yep.
As a defense, you should win every game.
Totally agree with the 17-point aspect of it. You mentioned too many shots down the field. Week 1, they didn't take any shots down the field. Not in a critical way, but more, can they? What did we learn about them taking shots down the field? Is that something that they can bring into their offense? Did you like, the way Hurts looked in throwing the ball down the field?
Yeah, I think that can be. I mean, they have the speed for it. I think, I don't buy into this. Hurts doesn't have his arm strength is questionable. It's not. He has enough arm to make those throws. I think it's more of a timing and just an accuracy issue, and that's going to come with time. I think that you see the receivers are able to get open down the field. I think the short to intermediate routes, they were really covered up pretty well from the 49ers standpoint. And I think that's where you need to figure out, if you're Nick Sirianni, how can we scheme these guys open consistently, because they didn't have that problem against the Falcons. But to answer your question, I think the deep ball, the deep aspect of the Eagles' offense, I think that's going to be a consistent focal point, because they have the speed to stretch the field, and that really opens up everything else.
Yeah, I know that they did connect on the one big play to Quez Watkins, and I want to get your opinion, Andrew, on the usage of Quez Watkins. The first game, a lot of bubble screens. This time they shot him down the field. You got to like the way they're using him, but I guess more of the question is how they're using their wide receivers in general, where Watkins turned out to be, your most productive guy on Sunday.
Yeah, that was a little bit interesting, because I thought Devontae Smith for sure would have really thrived on those short to intermediate routes against a player in Josh Norman, who was a recent addition to the 49ers. He doesn't run particularly well, and he's grabby. So I thought that there was going to be an opportunity to really hit him on possibly a double move and just really expose him. I think Quez Watkins, it's nice to see that they didn't just use him on these, quick screens and get him in space. They definitely used his vertical ability, and you really have to account for, he can run the full gamut of routes now, Mike. So he's not a very limited player. He's not going to be a volume guy, but I think that they can't just defend those short routes. They're going to have to protect against him burning them deep, because he has that ability. Jalen Reagor, to me, is a little bit interesting in how he's been used, or lack thereof, this week in those terms, because I thought that he really needs to be fine, and he needs to be schemed in space, let him take advantage of his explosive ability, much like he was in week 1. And I thought that there was an opportunity to get him going, and you didn't really see that this week. So that was a little bit little interesting to me to see how they chose to use him this week. So that's something to keep an eye on, because he's going to have an opportunity here to really take advantage of a vulnerable Cowboys secondary.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is the up and down painful. I don't want to say painful is not the right word, but the up and down nature, the inconsistencies you're going to get with a rookie wide receiver and 2 second-year guys.
Yeah, and that was to be expected, right? I mean, I've written about it. I know Jeff and Adam have mentioned it on the podcast before. This is something that you need to – there's going to be growing pains with these guys. There's going to be weeks where Devontae Smith's going to have a big week, and then you might not hear from him for a while, but it might be Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor picking up the slack. They just have a lot of young players, and they have a lot of guys to facilitate the ball to. And when you look at a player, for example, like Jalen Reagor on that touchdown, Nick Sirianni astutely pointed out that when he releases off the line, leave a little bit more room so you're not getting squeezed out by the corner. I mean, these are fundamental things, but these are errors that you have to take the good with the bad with these young players, because they're sort of learning on the fly, so to speak.
Andrew DeCecco covers the Eagles, InsideTheBirds.com. Of course, the Eagles lose to San Francisco, get ready to move on. But they lost more than the game, Andrew. They lost a couple of key players. And let's start with Brandon Graham, the heart and soul, really, of this team. He has been their best pass rusher. He has been their best run stuffer. So how do you see them replacing him and his production? How do they kind of patch this thing together?
Well, first and foremost, Brandon Graham can't be replaced. I mean, his energy, his ability to set the edge and anchor against the run, his leadership both on and off the field is going to be near impossible to replicate. However, the three guys that are going to sort of vie in you're going to see a combination of Josh Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, and Derek Barnett to fill the void. I would assume that you're going to see a lot of Ryan Kerrigan and Barnett and Josh Sweat working in. I ultimately think that Josh Sweat is going to take over that role, and I think you're going to see a lot of platooning between Kerrigan and Sweat, but I think Kerrigan's going to start and assume more of a larger role, particularly because of his run defense, I would say. But yeah, I mean, those are going to be the guys they're going to have to roll with. Teron Jackson is really best suited to be a fifth defensive end at this stage of his young career, but he's going to have an elevated role now as the fourth defensive end. So I mean, thankfully, you also have Milton Williams that can play outside and inside, so that helps too. I think they're going to be okay there, but you're really going to miss the leadership from Brandon Graham and just his ability on the field. I mean, he has a relentless motor, and his ability against the run is unmatched from any other players at that position.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Josh Sweat got that big deal. Do they up his snaps? I mean, do you see more of Kerrigan? We'll find out, I guess, starting on Monday night against the Cowboys. And then, of course, Andrew, right guard Brandon Brooks. Now, he's not lost for the season, but he's going to be on injured reserve for at least the next 3 weeks. And I guess that means Landon Dickerson is the guy. Two questions. One, is Landon Dickerson the guy that you would go with here, or is there somebody else, maybe Herbig or Driscoll, or do you like Dickerson? And what did you think of Dickerson in his first NFL action?
Well, the second part of your question I'll address first. I thought that he acquitted himself fairly well. He flashed some athleticism, but obviously, I thought that from a leverage standpoint, he was pretty high when he, off the snap, and the little things, Mike, that he's going to need to work on. Remember, this Landon Dickerson has not played football in 9 months, game action, since tearing his ACL in the 2020 SEC championship game, and you saw signs of rust, and that's to be expected. But I mean, in his 33 snaps, you saw some encouraging signs. Now, I think that he was sort of inserted a little bit earlier than the Eagles probably would have liked, and if I'm looking at pretty much I don't want to say a must-win, but it's a very pivotal matchup with the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night. Nate Herbig, to me, started 12 games last season. He was third on the team in snaps with 893. There won't be a big acclimation period for him. You can kind of plug him in. I thought he manned that position pretty adequately last season, like I said, and I think that there's a little bit of continuity there with him. So, I mean, on not a short week, but I would plug him in for this primetime matchup and really let Landon Dickerson, I would think if you're Jeff Stoutland and Nick Sirianni, really let him continue to develop, get stronger, and learn under Stoutland's tutelage this season, and take the reins next season. But I don't know that you want to overexpose him, fresh coming off an ACL injury, not that he suffered 9 months ago.
Right, so you would go with Herbig over Dickerson in this situation here. And then, of course, you hope to get Brandon Brooks back at some point down the line here. Because, Andrew, I think even though this is interesting. The offense only scored 11 points, but do we agree that the offensive line played pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line has held up very well. I mean, definitely against the Falcons, but I thought they did a decent job in week 2. Obviously, in the latter stages of that game, a lot of it you can attribute to Landon Dickerson. But again, he's a young player. He's going to need time to really adjust to the speed of the NFL. But I thought that losing Brandon Brooks, you saw Jalen Hurts under siege a little bit there, and you saw him have to take off as a result. But like I said, I would go with Nate Herbig for this week just because of his experience at that position. And you really don't want to overexpose Landon Dickerson, I wouldn't think, and have him, tack on a lot of mileage when he's, really just freshly and, he was on the active roster to start the season. But, I mean, and I think that he was playing a little bit earlier than they anticipated.
Yeah, we're talking with Andrew DeCecco. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. And obviously, 17 points, the defense played pretty well. Was there something in the defense, though, that maybe needs to be worked on? Or do you like what you've seen from Jonathan Gannon's group for the first 2 weeks?
That's a good question. I think that the defensive line needs to get a little bit more pressure, particularly off the edges. You would like to see them get some takeaways. They have no takeaways in 2 weeks. That's got to change in order to really play complementary football. I think the secondary did a pretty decent job outside of Deebo Samuel, who had 93 yards. I thought that they did a pretty good job bottling up. I mean, George Kittle had 17 yards on the day. I mean, he was 4 for 4, but he had 17 yards. I thought Singleton and Eric Wilson did a decent job. I thought the defensive tackles looked good. But at the end, you saw them start to wear down. You can only ask your defense to do so much before you need to see some returns on the other side and play complementary football. And you started to see the running game start to take its toll, and they lost a little bit of steam there. And you talk about Fletcher Cox mentioned the deflating penalty, obviously, on Kayvon Wallace there. And I think it was just between them wearing down and letting the air out of their sails with a play like that, with the game sort of hanging in the balance. I think that's sort of what you saw them falter at the end.
Hey, your thoughts on what the team – can they send a message to the Derek Barnett type of play that for him, I believe Zach Berman tweeted this out earlier this week, he has 6 unnecessary roughness penalties and 2 quarterback roughing penalties. So he has been a perpetual 15-yard penalty guy. Is there a message here, or because of Graham being hurt, do you got to kind of keep rolling with him more?
Yeah, I mean, just senseless, undisciplined football from Derek Barnett on so many countless occasions. I mean, you can remember that Green Bay game. I want to say it was 2019 maybe, where he had a late hit there, an unnecessary roughness penalty, and I think he was ejected, if I'm remembering it correctly. And I mean, this just can't happen, especially now that you're down to you have three defensive ends that you're really counting on. I think that they're going to handle that internally and really stress that. You heard Nick Sirianni, he was asked that question yesterday. There's not a whole lot that they can really do. I don't know that he's going to be disciplined or anything like that, but I mean, you really have to drive the point home that you're hurting your team. You have to think before you act, and you shouldn't have to tell. He's a veteran right now, Mike. I mean, he's 25 years old. You have to know better and think about your team and not put them in a situation like that. And I think that they're going to handle that and talk to him, and hopefully that gets resolved, because they can't afford to. They can't afford those silly penalties. You have to be disciplined, and you have to remain composed throughout the entirety of the game. You're a professional.
All right, I know you'll be back on Friday. We'll break down the Eagles and Cowboys a little bit more, but on the surface, first thought on the biggest issue for Philadelphia in this matchup is what?
I would say offensive consistency, and I would say turnovers. You got to get turnovers. In order to beat a team like Dallas who can score, you got to help your offense out and come up with some turnovers here. I mean, that's been a problem here for a number of seasons now.
All right, Andrew DeCecco, of course, the guys over at the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, giving you football at 4 every day right here at 4 o'clock on the Sports Bash Live. As the Eagles fall to 1-1, they are tied for first place. So obviously a big one on Monday night. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN as the Eagles and Cowboys both 1-1 inside the NFC East, as is Washington. So 3 teams, 1-1. New York is 0-2. Andrew, appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you Friday, pal.
Sounds good, Mike. Have a good one.
All right, Andrew DeCecco here on the Sports Bash Football at 4. It is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com.